Everyone, and welcome back to Mandy Weirdmore's classroom for a good old video essay on Howl's Moving Castle, my favorite movie of all time. If you are unaware of Howl's Moving Castle, it is an animated movie released in 2004 by Studio Ghibli, directed by Miyazaki. The movie is based on the book by Diane Jones Wynne, with the same name as the movie. The two main characters are Sophie and Howl, with beloved side characters such as Calcifer and Markle. Sophie works at her parents' hat shop, gets cursed by the Witch of the Waste to look elderly. Her mission is to track down Howl, and she's not worried about the wicked rumors about him that he eats women's hearts because she never believed she was beautiful, and he only eats beautiful women's hearts. The catch is, she cannot speak about her curse out loud to even receive help. Most people think of the film as a romance film. Even hardcore fans make jokes that they have no idea what the war was about and just care about the romance between Howl and Sophie. Don't get me wrong, I love the romance aspect too. It's perfect, they were made for each other. However, the war is a giant part of the movie, and it wouldn't be the same without it. It makes up almost the entirety of the movie. The movie opens with soldiers celebrating and parades. Sophie's mother is even sporting a capitalistic hat that features literal weapons as decorations. It was purposely written in because in the original book by Diane Wynne Jones, there was no war. It is hard for me to understand how people completely miss the symbolism of Howl losing himself due to the war, or just thinking it's a side plot. I mean, the first antagonists are soldiers from Sophie's own village harassing her, saying she looks even cuter when she's scared. Come on, that's insane for soldiers to say. Well, actually, it's really not insane because that type of stuff happens a lot, and I'll get into it more, but I mean, yeah. Ironically, Howl saves her from this situation. What makes this ironic is the rampant propaganda going on about Howl eating beautiful women's hearts, but not about the soldiers who are literally harassing their own citizens. Something all too common in war, soldiers using the opportunity to target vulnerable individuals such as young girls, while the pacifists are seen as villains and have propaganda spread about them. We see this time and time again in real life, and it's almost confusing to see it in a movie where you expect everything to be good. The war is due to the lost prince. One side thinks they have kidnapped the prince, and the other side is retaliating due to the violence against them. In reality, the prince was also cursed by a witch, and it had nothing to do with the two sides. It was an isolated incident. Howl does not want to participate in the war. He has gone so far as to playing both sides by having different aliases, such as Howl Jenkins and Howl Pendragon. Some fans of the movie say Howl did this because he didn't know which side of the war Sophie would be on. He knew of Sophie's existence because she went back in time when Howl traded his heart for power and said, "Find me in the future." This may be accurate, however, he talks much more about how he's a coward and can't make a choice. He discusses with Calcifer other witches and wizards fighting in the war, turning into literal monsters for the king. He means this literally because in the movie, overuse of your magic turns you into a monster with no return. Calcifer says they're not going to be able to turn back human after the war. And Howl replies, they won't even remember they were human after the war. Even Howl, who is playing both sides, is physically changed into a monster, just not as fast as the others, even if you are doing something for the right reasons, for the right cause. During war, it still changes you. Yes, it is literal in the movie that they will physically turn into monsters, but it's eerily similar to real life. Veterans who come back from home completely changed with severe post-traumatic stress disorder, and a severe lack of resources. Even citizens not participating in the war are changed due to malnutrition and constantly living in a state of anxiety, which can cause physical conditions. Miyazaki portrays the citizens changing like Sophie, rapidly aging, something that happens in real life during war due to the trauma. It physically ages you as well as mentally aging you. Even though this movie was released in 2004 and was intended to be a sly way for Miyazaki to critique the United States invading Iraq in 2003 without explicitly saying so, Miyazaki's opinions on the war are widely known. He even rejected an Oscar for his film Spirited Away in opposition of the war. In an interview with The Times in 2009, he broke his silence. "The reason I wasn't here for the Academy Award was because I didn't want to visit a country that was bombing Iraq at the time. My producer shut me up and did not allow me to say that, but I don't see him around today." By the way, my producer also shared in this feeling. Miyazaki wasn't the only one in opposition. 62% of Americans were, according to Pew Research Center, against this war. However, Americans were accepting at the time due to the 9/11 attack. George W. Bush claimed that information leading them to believe they had weapons of mass destruction and supporting terrorist groups. However, numerous investigations by independent government commissions found there is no factual basis for either. 2 decades later, it's still debated if the president had faulty intel or that they were purposely misled the United States citizens. The war was pointless either way. And Miyazaki took inspiration from that. The movie's war was also pointless because neither side has caused the prince's disappearance. Miyazaki took inspiration from this. He made the war start in the movie due to faulty intel that the prince had been taken, even though the prince was cursed and just missing. It was nobody's fault. Even before the prince is found, Howl was always anti-war. There is a beautiful moment that shows this when a bomber plane flies over Sophie and Howl. Sophie asks Howl, "Is it one of ours or the enemy's?" And Howl replies, "What difference does it make?" I think this moment perfectly encapsulates there are no winners in war, and Howl sees this from the very beginning, from seeing the wizards and witches lose their humanity on both sides. Even Howl, who only wants to do good and doesn't want to pick a side, is changed. It doesn't matter your position in a war. It will leave you changed, and not in a good way. Even Howl's hair is symbolic. His hair starts off as blonde, and his character flamboyant. Madame Solomon's apprentices all look like many child versions of Howl. Also, I should probably mention who Madame Solomon is. She is a wizard queen of the other side, basically one of the oppositions who is in the war. There you go. And she wants all the wizards to fight for her. Anyway, all her apprentices look like child versions of Howl with his blonde hair. However, we see Howl before he traded his heart with black hair. He wasn't always like this. When Howl accepts Sophie into his life and speaks his mind about the war, his hair is accidentally dyed black by Sophie when she cleans and rearranges his bathroom. It is quite the funny scene with Howl freaking out about the hair change, saying Sophie has forsaken him and he's no longer beautiful. It is played off as overdramatic. However, Sophie replies she has never been beautiful. On a deeper level, this has nothing to do with beauty. It has to do with others' views and opinions and how they no longer match the citizens' views or the people in power views. They stand out, which makes them not beautiful in their own way, even though that's not accurate. So they are seen as different, therefore not beautiful because of their views. The deeper meaning behind it all is Howls' hair matches what it looked like before he lost his heart. It's no shocker Miyazaki's film is anti-war when you look at the catalog of films he's created. Porco Rosso, which takes place mid-fascist Italy, literally has this statement of, "I'd rather be a pig than a fascist," an iconic line, of course. So it's not really shocking. And then also, Wind Rises is about a man who is in love with making airplanes, but his love is used for weapons, and he has to grapple with the fact that his creations will kill. Miyazaki has always been politically known as a socialist and environmentalist, anti-war, and pro-union. So it's really no shocker, but people seem to miss Howl's Moving Castle is extremely anti-war and think of the war as not part of the movie at all, and it's just a romance. And I feel like more people need to know, especially nowadays with this government. It's not looking great. It's important to learn about fascism. Howl's Moving Castle is timeless, even though it was inspired by the America versus Iraq War. Wars tend to be about the same things: money, land, religion, and sometimes all three at the same time. Propaganda is always used, and vulnerable communities are always targeted. No matter what war will leave everyone involved changed. Howl's Moving Castle will remain timeless as long as there is war. And sadly, I don't see humans evolving past war anytime soon. Even Miyazaki states in the art book titled Hayao Miyazaki by Jessica Niebel, "I believe that violence and aggression are essential parts of us as human beings. I think it is impossible to eliminate that impulse from ourselves. The issue is that we confront as human beings is how to control that impulse." Page 105. I hope one day we can all learn to control that impulse and wars will be a thing of the past. But I don't see that happening, especially with the rise of anti-intellectualism and the move towards fascism in many places. So I think it's important to study the deeper meaning of movies like I'm doing in this video. Don't let yourself think everything is simple and nothing is political. Be intelligent, read books, see what's happening. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed spending time with me. Most importantly, everyone, stay weird. Bye!